Welcome to Careers Unwrapped, where we delve into real-life career stories from successful people who've been through it all, the ups and the downs. We'll get their raw, honest, actionable advice and be the careers talk they wish they'd had when they started out. As someone who has had a varied career, from soldier to salesman, expedition leader to entrepreneur, he knows firsthand that your career doesn't always lead you where you expect it to. Here's your host, Mark Fawcett.
Hello and welcome to Careers Unwrapped. I'm your host, Mark Fawcett, and with me today is Verity Park. She's the founder of TBH Talent, and today's career conversation is hopefully going to be all about business building, about the world of digital talent management, influencers, content, and Verity's hopefully going to be talking about how she developed her own career, the lessons she's learned from that process, and what we might all be able to pick up from that. So Verity, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
One of the things I wanted to talk about was role models. So your agency represents many of them, and who have been the most important role models in your own life and what you've learned from them?
I try and view my role models more holistically. Like I look at lots of different people and take things that I like from lots of different people. Like even in kind of more general personable settings, like my brother might be my role model in the sense that like he will respond in a way to a situation and I'll be like, I wish I responded a little bit more like that, or I wish in difficult situations I did that, and I will reflect on it afterwards and he'll become, I guess, my role model in that sense. But I don't think I necessarily have one specific role model or someone that I look up to who I would say provides all my inspiration, because I feel like I'm aware that people are good and bad in lots of different ways, and you've kind of just got to pick what you like from everyone and try and replicate that.
No, I agree with that so much myself. The people I've worked with over the years, and I've done many different roles, have all taught me something, sometimes consciously, as you just say, you see someone do something, I wish I had done it that way. Other times it's just subconscious and you only think about it a few years later, you picked up some habits and mannerisms. And occasionally, of course, you learn something that you don't want to do because you've seen someone do it in a way that you don't appreciate. So you now have set up and run your own business. What was your journey from the first inkling of an idea to actually then committing and getting the business going?
All of my experience in the space, I built through working at an agency and managing creators at that agency. And I left and I actually had trialed setting up a direct consumer candle business, which was featured in lots of different publications. You know, we managed to sell thousands of units of our candles that we were making during lockdown, but it wasn't a profitable business. And for that reason, it couldn't sustain me and my co-founder. But the experience I learned from that was invaluable. Like it was incredible just doing, learning all the like nuts and bolts of business, even though it's direct to consumer as opposed to business to business, which is obviously what I do now. So yeah, I had experience working at an agency and sort of in the corporate world. Then I set up my candle business, which was obviously direct to consumer. And then I trialed creating content on TikTok myself, which was what I call lifting the lid on the influencer space. There's a lot of gatekeeping, or was a lot of gatekeeping in the industry. Lots of people who aren't or don't have access to the top agencies don't have access to that information. And obviously I had an in. I'd worked at that agency, the top agency, for 5 years. And I decided to start sharing that information about how to work in the space, how it's professionalized and all of those things. And some of my videos were getting millions of views. And I thought, hold on a second, this is interesting. So in a way, it kind of happened quite organically because I was creating these videos which were more like educational. And then off the back of that, I was getting really high profile creators asking me to manage them. So yeah, I'd say it kind of happened organically through generating content on TikTok, actually, which is ironic because obviously I manage TikTokers.
A lot of people I find during these conversations, the first major step in starting their own business is partly about the business plan and idea, but a lot of it is about overcoming the fear that I might get it wrong. I might lose some money. I might be left with no job. But the people who've then gone through that barrier of the fear look back and go, actually, that wasn't nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be. Did you feel confident from the get-go, or did you think, hang on, this is going to be quite a big deal to start this?
I think you missed one very important fear there. And for me, that was the fear of looking stupid. I felt like I wanted to create these TikToks, I wanted to create content, but I didn't want to look stupid. And you only don't look stupid when your content does well. But your content's only going to do well when you try and make content and try different things and test it. So I had a big fear of looking stupid. And I think TikTok helped with that, because TikTok was like, at the time, none of my friends were really on it. And like, I sort of managed to get to like 10,000 followers, which is kind of like, okay, well, I've got 10,000 followers. So even though that's nothing now in the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, that's fine for me to generate content now, even though obviously it's absolutely fine to generate it at any level. But I wanted to build that like sort of little base before my friends saw it.
And what do your friends think now?
Do you know what? I don't ask them, because quite frankly, like, I don't care. I guess like it's got to the point now where it generates leads for me and my business, and it's really important for the profiling of my business. And so I don't really care what anyone thinks about it, quite frankly. But I did before, because it wasn't leading to anything before. So I didn't, it's more, I guess I had more fear around it.
Well, I mean, it's a very public way of getting your face out there, your message across. It's not somewhere you can hide if you're jumping into TikTok.
Exactly. But there were lots of other fears, like you say, and like you've rightly identified, like it was scary not having an income and having no guaranteed way of getting an income. But I'd worked out a way of managing that for a set amount of time. And in my head, I was like, right, I'll give it this time period. And if it's not looking good, I can always get another job.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I made the decision to do it when I had no dependents. I didn't have a mortgage. So there were I did have rent to pay, but I could have always got someone to fill my room and, go home if I needed to. So I was like, I've got 6 months to do this, basically.
And did the experience that you had with the candle business, and that working in some sense, in that you were selling product, but not necessarily working commercially, did the experience of having gone through that and come out the other end help you in getting this business off the ground?
100%. Because it made me realize that actually it's all about finding the information. Like, the information is there, and there are lots of things which are really scary. Like, for me, forecasting and like profit and loss and all of that, tax, that stuff wasn't something that I particularly felt comfortable with. And I wouldn't say that, like, on the whole, it's culturally something women are encouraged to be involved with when, I mean, certainly not when I was growing up, and definitely not the years before that. So I think like there was a few things going on there, but now I'm able to employ someone to do that, but they do it with me.
Yeah.
So like I'm able to learn and understand and develop and grow that muscle, like that side of my brain, which I've loved, because I've always wanted to know and do that sort of stuff. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it's about the time and effort you put in. Like, it's not I can or can't do this. That you can do everything, but you just have to learn. And that sometimes takes a long time.
And those crossing the fear barriers, knowing where to look for the information to help you. And in some sense, it's just then taking those first steps. And you gave yourself time. You gave yourself a period of time with financial links, but obviously it has worked through in that period of time. So now you have a roster of talent, of creatives who you look after. What advice, with both your experience now, but also with the hindsight that you've gained, what advice would you give to people who are starting out in the whole digital creative environment? People think, I want to be a creator, I want to put my own content out there. What would you say to them?
Jump on new emerging platforms. Yes, great, Instagram, TikTok. But what about the platforms that are coming up and prioritizing organic reach? Because we've seen it time and time again over the years. The big platform was once blogging, actually, like writing blogs. And then it became YouTube, and then it became Instagram, and then it became TikTok. And there's like Twitch and all these other sorts of platforms. I mean, I don't really work that much on Twitch. Obviously, there was Twitter as well, and now people don't really use, or X, people don't really use that much. I mean, as in the same way, like it's obviously certain people do use it, but it's like there's always a different platform which brands are putting their budget through. So identify new up and coming platforms. One now to look at is Snap, in my opinion. I think that's coming back, but not loads of brands are putting their budget through it, but it's coming up. I think brands will be soon because they're getting lots of organic reach on there. Try and get over the fear of creating content. It's probably the second thing. Like, it's really scary, but you just have to be authentic and put yourself out there. 3 is probably collaborate with other creators.
The talent you represent, do they collaborate with each other, or do you put them in touch with each other and encourage that collaboration?
It's got to be authentic. So we don't tell them to meet up and we create content together. But my roster specifically, and I'm so proud of this, and this is always something I wanted, we always we have like a quarterly meetup with everyone. So they all know each other and they all have relationships and they all support each other. And, you know, one of my talent the other day, it was her book launch in Amsterdam. Ellie Middleton, she's launching book 2 in Amsterdam. One of my creators, Lou May, just so happened to be there and then made the effort to go to Amsterdam to support her with her book launch. And that's the sort of culture that we want to foster, make happen.
With this talent, what makes the difference between good talent and brilliant, between good content and brilliant? What's that extra sparkle that really helps a small number of people stand out?
For us and for who we take onto our roster, and again, this isn't necessarily for everyone, but for us, what's really important is that they have some sort of purpose. Now, that doesn't need to necessarily be like a political purpose, but often what we say the creators that we like to take on our roster are lifestyle creators with something to say. So we like creators who have a bit of a purpose. They can hang their content on something, you know. So one of our creators is a sobriety creator. One of our creators talks about autism and ADHD. That's just to name a few, really, but we want them to have substance.
Just digging into the commercials of this a bit, because it's often an area I've been asked about, so I'm interested in your perspective of it. Where does the money come from, the earnings come from for the content creators? So obviously they can be getting earnings from lots of different angles, but the ones who are actually making a living out of it, where is the money coming from? Which platforms or which activities and how much?
It depends, is that the answer. They can have different revenue streams from different places. So brand deals is probably the main one. They work with brands, they create content for brands that sits on their channel, advertisements, and they get paid for that. Affiliate is another. So they sell products for brands and they get a commission on every product that is sold. They also can do that on TikTok Shop. You know, they sell products on TikTok Shop. They get a commission for every product that's sold. The TikTok Creator Fund, that's a smaller one, but that's pay per view. YouTube AdSense, you know, you can be paid from the platforms for views. So Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok pay for views. You can be paid by, you know, podcast sponsorships, book deals. So via publishers or publishing houses. You can be paid by licensing your content out to brands to use themselves in paid media. Some talent, depending on how big they are, cartoon of them could be drawn up, and then you could be paid for licensing out that image and that cartoon, you know? So there are so many different ways to make money. And I guess that is the role of the manager, to look at how you maximize that.
And so that brings actually neatly onto what I did want to explore with your role in all of this. So I'm presuming that some of the content creators are fantastic at content and storytelling, and others also have a strong commercial head on their shoulders. But for the ones who just want to focus on their content, on the stories that they're telling through that, what is the work that you do for them that makes their life easier, but also earns them and you money?
First of all, we take all of that more admin-based side of things, replying to emails, doing contracts, briefs, etc., off their hands. So immediately that enables them to level up what they're doing, because we're taking away 50% of their workload. And it's just like when you hire someone, you grow quicker because you being able to focus on what you do best. So that's kind of the immediate thing. And we've seen our creators, with our advice and our strategic support, just go onto different platforms, which then generates a whole new income stream for them because they're then able to dedicate that time. Plus, we're able to explain to them how to do that and how to make that happen. We have a much better oversight of what's going on in the industry than creators do as individuals, because we're on the inside, right? We're having all of these conversations. We've got, like, me and the team are all out talking to brands, agencies, PRs all every day. So we know what's happening. So we're able to then seed that information out strategically to them. So they're a bit more in the know when they are managed, and or if they have good management. And they also, sometimes just in our negotiating, we can 5 times someone's fee what they were charging before, 10 times. Like it's really quite surprising, like, because we know the value of their content. When we have a look and we can see the back end data, we can then, using different levers that we have got used to using, because we understand the contracts and the briefs, etc., we're then able to increase what they're earning significantly. But also just sometimes having management, if they're good management, does give you a positioning that you might not have had before. But I'd say that's the smallest thing. I'd say the main thing is the strategic advice, knowing what's happening in the space, contacts, and having a team. So you're able to then focus on other things. You're not worrying about chasing the invoices. You're not worrying about sending out the invoices, doing the negotiating, doing the contracting, doing the briefing, and then also the negotiation ad. So, like, we're able to negotiate and set their rates.
Amongst all of the creators you've represented, have you ever had to take the decision to remove any from your management?
So we have a trial period, which is 4 months. Creators always think this is there for them. Like, so we've got a trial period, it's 4 months. You can see whether you like us. It's also there for us because 4 months is a good time for us to work out whether there is synergy there and whether they're getting along with our ways of working and whether we're getting along with theirs and whether, it makes sense as a partnership. So yeah, there's been times when we've had to make the decision to not continue the trial. Not generally have we moved past trial and then ended the relationship. Normally it's the trial period because we're getting a sense as to whether we think we can add value to what they're doing. Yeah. And that is what we're trying to work out. It's a relationship and it's whether either side is going to be getting value. And if they're not, then it makes more sense for them. Often what happens is they join our non-exclusive roster, but or perhaps we're just not the right management fit and they need to find management that have slightly more of a focus on TV or whatever it is.
Okay. There's an increasing amount of commentary in wider media about social media at the moment and the impacts it might be having, particularly on younger children, and also around a growing debate around mental health and what role social media is playing in and around that. What's your take on that discussion and the thought of the impacts of social media on young people?
It's nuanced, isn't it? There's lots of different things going on there. I would say when TV came out, everyone, made a big hoo-ha about how TV was going to, ruin the next generation. And yes, if everyone sat and watched TV all day and had no boundaries at all, it probably would, depending on the content they're consuming. So similarly, with the internet or with social media, you can control the content or you can curate the content you're seeing to an extent, and then you have to set your own boundaries. So for me, if I sit and scroll on social media all day, I feel really rubbish because I've not got outside, I've not exercised and all of those things, and I've been consuming content depending on what the content is. Because if the content is really inspiring, or, whatever else, it really relates to me, as opposed to, looking at people who make me feel jealous or not good enough or whatever. Then they're two different things as well. So I think it's about setting boundaries, using the platform tools to make sure that you're protecting yourself and consuming the right content, but making sure that you're not on that for 5 or 6 hours a day. But yeah, I mean, I'm a 30-year-old, so it's different for me and compared with a 15-year-old. And I'm not a parent, so I can't comment, but I think there are parental tools that you can use to protect your children, like now on Instagram. I don't know about TikTok, but I think definitely on Instagram, because I went to a whole session on it. And I think just like TV or whatever will come next, holograms, who knows, there will always be a risk, but it's about, surrounding kids with love and, giving them other things that they are able to enjoy outside of social media, and giving them the right support and love and talking them through these things so they're able to set those boundaries for themselves and understand the impact that social media is having on them. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm not a parent, so I'm not here trying to give parenting advice. My sisters would tell me that was really silly of me because they're parents and the parents don't like that, which I understand. But that is what I think about it. I think there's always going to be dangers for children, and it's about protecting them as best that you can and using the tools that you have available to protect them.
In terms of content that inspires, as opposed to negative content, who are the creatives that maybe you're just taking on or emerging? Who are the up and coming creatives who inspire or excite you?
Well, I mean, my full roster inspires and excites me. But I would actually say if I had a 15-year-old child, I would be thrilled if they were consuming my creators' content. I don't even know where to start because they all do such amazing things. But Ellie Middleton, for example, she's autistic and she has ADHD, and she's, normalizing that conversation, bringing it to the forefront, really for women as well, who are so often get late diagnosis, is starting that conversation, explaining, how autism or ADHD might look as a young girl. So young girls coming up can understand, okay, actually, maybe that's me. And then they might look for a diagnosis themselves. And I know a diagnosis for Ellie has been so incredibly helpful. Or Millie Gooch, who's talking about sobriety and actually how sobriety has had such an incredible impact on her life, and how you don't need to be an alcoholic to decide that you don't want to, drink a poison every day. I'm not sober, but I just think what she's doing is really, really important. And it has definitely made me rethink my relationship with that. And then also JC, and JC talks about body positivity and loving yourself and living in the moment and setting boundaries and all of these things. So those are just 3 people on my roster who are doing incredible things for people and young people now. And even for in the entertainment space, we've got Morgan M. James, who's so kind of personable, he's so bubbly, and he does all these celebrity interviews, but in such a child-friendly, safe way. And he's so responsible and he takes it all really seriously. And yeah, as I say, people like that, I'd be absolutely thrilled if my children, nieces, nephews were consuming their content.
Using hindsight yourself now, because as far as an entrepreneur, a business owner, a startup creator goes, you're still relatively young, but you had 5 years, the first talent agency, you went through the process, the good and bad learnings from your candle business. You're now a couple of years into TBH Talent as well. If you could almost go back in time and give some advice to 18-year-old Verity, what might you pass on to yourself in terms of what you've learned, the good and the bad, through your career journey so far?
I'd say don't spend so much time worrying about what other people think of you and where you fit in social groups and things like that. Just use the spare time that you're worrying about these things to work on yourself and develop skills and better yourself and learn things. Try and focus on learning things and bettering yourself, as opposed to worrying about things that don't matter. But obviously that's very easy for me to say with hindsight. And it's still something I'm working on now, I don't feel like that's something you ever perfect, but it's certainly something I've got better at. And I feel like when you get into the habit of doing it, it's much easier to do.
I completely agree. I continue to learn every week of my working life. And I've been lucky to have several really quite different career directions and running different businesses. And I learned still from people around me. I learned from clients. I learned from speaking to people like you, Verity. And that never goes away. If you stop learning, you're stagnating somehow. And I think the more conscious you are of learning, the more you are actually going to learn, because you're looking out for things to learn from. I think it's been so interesting to talk this through with you, Verity, because we've covered off in this short conversation the fear and the different types of fear when you get going, and how they're never quite as bad once you look back on them. The experiences you had through your first business that worked in some ways but didn't work overall as a business, and how you've consciously taken that forward, how you've also learned from other people as you go along the way, but also any aspiring or budding content creatives as well listening to this. There have been some really good hints and clues in here about the direction to take, and I was particularly taken by your view that the talent you work with needs to have some sort of purpose to what they're doing as well, something to hang their content and hang their story on. So Verity, it's been so good to have you on Careers Unwrapped. Thank you very much for joining us. There's one thing we always do want to ask of people, which is about passing the baton of careers experience on. So if there's one other person who you think it would be really good to get on here, whose own career journey will provide interest and learning and stories, then who else do you think we should get on Careers Unwrapped?
I met her. She actually reached out to me because I've just been on her podcast, and she's just raised investment to start up a company called Riser, which I think will be really relevant to you and what you're doing and your listeners. The company Riser is all about, it's kind of like Bumble, but for your boss, is what she calls it. So it's all about being able to swipe and network in that way, in like a really like new way, basically. And she's kind of started building the first phase of it, and it's launching very soon. She's called Lemise Butt. I will send all of her links over so you can find her. And she has just the most incredible stories. She's always been really entrepreneurial. She's told me such incredible stories, and I really want her to share them. And I've told her she should put them on TikTok, but maybe she'll share them on the Careers Unwrapped podcast for you guys.
That would be brilliant. We'll reach out to her. Verity, thank you so much for joining us, for unwrapping your own career, and good luck in the next stages of TBH Talent's journey as well.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for your time.
This podcast is sponsored by We Are Futures. To find out more about We Are Futures and how we can introduce your brand, business, or organisation to the mass markets of tomorrow, visit www.wearefutures.com. Make sure to search for Careers Unwrapped in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Remember to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at We Are Futures, thanks for listening.